earlier today, I recorded an episode that, by my standards, kind of a rant. I don't really do rants on here. And it was genuine. It was sincere. But by the time it was done, it just didn't sit well with me. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes I go into something with an idea in mind or an intention in mind, and in the execution, it just doesn't quite work. I haven't listened back to the episode, but I'm savvy enough, I've been doing this long enough, where I just kind of know by the way it feels that maybe it's not all that I hoped it would be. The problem I run into, as this is kind of a fly-by-night operation, a lot of the time I'm recording right up against the deadline. And you got to have a bit of faith. You got to hit it lucky sometimes that you actually execute something that works, because you don't really have a lot of time to redo it, although that's what I'm doing now. And I was on about social media. I didn't have anything prepared this week. I didn't have time. I didn't have the energy to run super deeply into a topic. The episode I did last week about the book of Job took a lot out of me, took a lot of time. And I had a gig last weekend, and I went to Toronto to see The Darkness last Friday night. So there was stuff, great show, by the way, that was just taking me away from, I just didn't have all the time this week to dedicate to something, and that happens too. And so I was trying to do something, and it wound up being, I don't know, it feels a little bit like it was a bit performative. Hard for me to say. It's a really fine line. When you do something like this, a podcast, I mean, it's a fine line sometimes between being a character and being genuine. And I think that I meld those lines together fairly successfully, but maybe it's a lack of confidence. Maybe it's like, if I come on here as my actual self, nobody would listen to that. The great irony being, nobody listens to this either. Point being, I got onto a diatribe about social media, and it was a diatribe at social media, but in truth, the anger was at myself. Here's what happened. Monday morning, I got up, and in the time between when I got out of bed and when I got to my desk, which is about an hour and a half, it's a really wonderful window of time. There's an opportunity in that hour and a half to set the tone for your day. And there's a smart way and a not very smart way to do that. Or shall we say a productive and a not very productive way to do that. And so what I didn't do in that hour and a half of precious time, what I didn't do was my daily German lesson. What I didn't do was meditate. What I didn't do was go for a peaceful, mind-clearing, uplifting walk around the neighborhood. What I didn't do was sit at the table with my cup of coffee and the window open and just listen to the sound of the morning. All of these things are at very least productive and, generally speaking, edifying. I didn't do that. I made a rookie mistake that I shouldn't make because I'm not a rookie in any sense. I went down the social media rabbit hole. I doom scrolled on a Monday friggin' morning for 45 solid minutes. Talk about wasted time. And it's Monday morning. I mean, any morning you're setting the tone for the day, but Monday morning, you're setting the tone for the week. And I did the worst possible thing. I did the equivalent of eating Tootsie Rolls for breakfast. I sat down with my stupid phone and I popped into social media, Facebook, whatever, just to get the temperature. And I should be savvier than this, because some people are capable of literally checking all of their socials in 30 seconds, realizing there's nothing to see, nothing to experience, and shut it off and get on with their lives. Others of us, and it's not just me, get pulled down the rabbit hole. And the social media sites, the apps, are so savvy. They're so good at pulling you in. Facebook is very insidious these days because you'll get into Facebook and then they'll throw some thread posts at you, it all being meta. And you'll click on one and then you'll get pulled into Threads. And Threads is Facebook on steroids, right? In terms of attention span. And Threads is Meta's version of X. And if you're on X, get the hell off of it now. X is an horrendous, just cesspool of rage and anger and bots and manipulation. If you're on X, get away from it if you value your mental health. Anyways, Facebook will pull you into Threads, and Threads is a scroll machine, man. It is a scroll device because everything is just a quick hit, right? Everything's a one hitter, and you scroll to the next, and you scroll to the next, and you scroll to the next. And I found myself down the rabbit hole. And the problem is that increasingly, whatever I encounter on social media is just rage bait. It's rage bait or it's engagement farming. I mean, the rage bait really works right now. With the political situation all over the world, it's not hard. You don't have to look very far to find something that makes you furious. And the algorithms promote what makes you furious because they know human psychology is one of their basic parameters. It tells them that anger draws more engagement than happy things. So people will stay on the platform longer who are angry and want to argue. And so the algorithms promote contentious stuff that makes people angry because they stay longer on the platform. And then they can sell more advertising or more expensive advertising, and they can farm your information and they can sell that off. The money is in the rage. And the political scene these days provides ample opportunity to promote rage to your average user. My algorithm is trained pretty well to deliver that to me, and it's a sick kind of addiction. And it really is an addiction. It's a physical thing. The dopamine rush that comes from anger is intense and powerful, and I can be conscious, scrolling and knowing I'm scrolling, and virtually powerless to stop, and landing on the next thing, and landing on the next thing, and landing on the next thing. And increasingly, all of this is driven by AI. It's as empty as it's possible to be. It's as useless and as pointless as it's possible to get. And you know as well as I do, savvy person that you are, that on any political post, the first 5 to 10 comments are from bots. They're from bots or they are from professional trolls who have been programmed or who have been paid to just make inflammatory, insulting, confrontational comments to, again, promote that rage and engagement. It's a complete cynical manipulation. And as a human being, it's incredibly difficult not to get pulled into it. And so this episode that I recorded was sort of, you can't see me right now, but I got my hand at the top of my head. It was up here. Okay, it was kind of an angry rant about my own reaction to social media. But then it occurred to me later, as I was sipping a sparkling water, coming at it in a sort of rage, not exactly rage, but coming in it up here, just contributes more, right? It just contributes more of that vibe, more of that emotion into a world that is already plagued by that sort of intensity and that sort of emotion. And I'm like, a spiritual person doesn't approach things that way. A spiritual person comes in peaceful, if he or she comes in at all. A lot of people are way smarter than me. They eschew this altogether. And I've been wrestling with this over the past few weeks. This question of whether I should even stay on social media, because so much of it now, 15 years ago, it was really quaint. You went on social media and you connected with your friends. And those of us who are Gen X, it was this wonderful digital high school reunion. I had been out of high school for, 15 years by the time Facebook came around, and had lost contact with almost everybody who I knew back then. younger people than me stayed in contact. They had email, they had whatever. But those of us who kind of came of age in the 80s, early 90s didn't have that connection, lost it with people. Along comes Facebook, and suddenly you're reconnecting with people. It was great. It was great back in the day. And then they started figuring out ways to make money off it. And then they started figuring out ways to keep people on the platforms. Everything turned into a slot machine. Everything turned into a casino. And it's just gone downhill from there. But now I realize as I get onto a Facebook or whatever, it's just endless ads. You know, I stay on the platforms, because I'm a musician and I do a lot of my connecting and promoting of music and the shows I'm playing and the artists I'm working with. A lot of that is done through Facebook, through Instagram, whatever. And I'm promoting a podcast. And so it's like, well, where else am I going to promote it than on social media? Even though I realize that my promoting on social media accomplishes almost nothing. I've got 1,000 and change followers on Instagram. About 30 of those people ever see anything that I post. I mean, the social media does absolutely nothing to promote my show. It does very, very little to promote the shows I'm playing, the gigs I'm playing, the artists I'm playing with. And I recognize that there are ways to manipulate that and dig in a little bit deeper and try to game the system, game the algorithm. I don't wanna. I flat out don't wanna. And 90% of the creatives I know don't wanna either. They don't want to have to do this. They don't want to have to be a dancing monkey on TikTok trying to get people to listen to their music. And I'm one of them. I just don't have the time and energy for that. I'm not interested. And then when you go on these platforms, so much of what is presented to you is angry, volatile, salacious, friggin' empty. I'm getting ads for AI girlfriends, and I'm thinking about it. And it's just like, what are we doing here? You know, I considered on Monday morning, I doom scrolled for 45 minutes over breakfast. It's like eating 3 bowls of Count Chocula. And I considered objectively what I had just scrolled through. And it was just like this insane kaleidoscope, this living digital pinball machine of just bells and whistles and noise and colors. And it's like, you ever go down a 45-minute rabbit hole and then at the end of it, you're like, I don't remember a single thing that I looked at. I don't remember a single thing that I just devoted my precious time and attention to. And you end that feeling as though you've just eaten a supersized Big Mac combo with a Coke. You feel awful, right? Tastes great going in, because that's the dopamine. And then when you're done, you're like, why did I do that to my body? Why did I do that to myself? That stuff is terrible. I feel awful. And psychically, it works that way when I get to the end of a doom scroll. Why did I do that to my mind? Why did I expose my spirit to 45 minutes of ads for stuff and photographs of people jumping out of the Twin Towers on 9/11 and footage from Gaza, and then an angry rant about whatever MAGA's talking about, and then an angry rebuttal to that, and then bots just being the biggest assholes that they can possibly be to make people angry. And then you find yourself sitting over breakfast on a Monday morning in this horrendous, toxic soup of anger and emptiness and awfulness. And then when you think about it objectively, just an endless string of thousands and thousands of bits of information just being smashed into your brain. You know what I mean? And thirst traps and ads for God knows what. Endless. And it's just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're not meant to process information this way, especially empty, pointless, soulless rage bait and clickbait and engagement farming. Name one comedian everybody loves that you can't stand. Why is this being presented to me? What's the worst movie of all time? It's engagement farming, right? They want people to comment on that, and then the algorithm boosts their account. And I'm finding this now on YouTube. I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I'm either researching for like my episode last week on Job, a lot of research, or I'm checking out some new music, or I'm listening to something that's supposed to be edifying, say, for example, a video about some tenet of Buddhism or a Stoic philosophy or an idea. And increasingly, those are AI too. So you call it up and I'm going to watch this video. And then you realize it's an AI voice over AI graphics, probably an AI script. And then you realize the level of cynicism that's already being applied to this AI technology. I read an article last week about this company in the States that exists only to create AI podcasts. So they've created a whole stable of AI podcast hosts, and they're churning out, I think it said 3,000 podcast episodes a week. 3,000 podcast episodes a week that are entirely AI generated and hosted by AI voices. And they plan to turn those quote unquote hosts into social media influencers and build this whole infrastructure, this whole tribe around these utterly fake hosts hosting utterly fake content. And they're knocking out 3,000 a week. Why? Because AI can produce one of these episodes in minutes. The episode I did about the book of Job took me the better part of 2 weeks to make. Between researching and trying to get my thoughts together and trying to make sense of it and then recording the thing and editing and uploading, it took me 2 weeks to make that thing. AI can make that credibly in minutes. And so this podcast farm is just flooding the world with literally thousands of new episodes. And I have to compete with that. People have to wade through that. And the AI becomes more convincing all the time. We can watch a video now and we can be reasonably assured. Like, we know it doesn't look quite right. It's pretty obviously AI. I heard Gary Vee saying, I think just today, that within, 12 to 15 months or whatever, you won't be able to tell anymore what's AI and what isn't. We reach a point and we're getting there very quickly. Remember, AI has only really been in our consciousness for like a year or something. We're already reaching a point where you won't be able to trust or believe anything that you see. You just won't be able to, because it's so slick now, and you won't be able to trust anything. And what will people do with that? I mean, we've already seen the cynical ways in which people are using this technology. That podcast farm is one idea. As soon as ChatGPT became savvy, people were using that to write books. All of a sudden, people are calling themselves authors. I got 30 books out. ChatGPT wrote them all. They packaged them up and put them online. And artists have been dealing with this since it was a possibility. People who poured their life and soul into creating art now are competing with people who are just prompting AI to make the art for them. We're seeing it beginning to happen in music now. AI is creating credible music, and you just kind of throw your hands up. You're like, where's humanity gone? And do I want to be part of this? And increasingly, I think about checking out. I think about checking out of digital life. And I don't necessarily want to do that, because the parts of social media that are good can still be good. And I recognize the obligation I have to train my algorithm better. But I'm only a man. I'm only a man, I'm only a human. And I have allowed the phone, I have allowed the apps to addict me as they've addicted everyone else. This is the weird thing. You get yourself into a 45-minute doom scroll and you know you're doing it, and you know you don't like it when you get to the end and you feel as though you've eaten a supersized Big Mac combo with a large Coke for lunch. You feel awful. When you get to the end of doing something and feel awful about it, you recognize that your soul does not want to do this, man. The better part of you, the higher part of you, knows that this is toxic to your system. Right down to physically, it's toxic to you, and you know, and you are powerless against it. And you know that when you feel so awful after having done it. And that was me Monday morning. And I'm like, this is how I'm setting the tone for my week. I am spending 45 minutes doom scrolling through absolute trash nothingness. Stuff that is violent, stuff that is angry, stuff that is toxic, stuff that tears you down, stuff that causes division. And I am absorbing that. You know, when they say you are what you eat, they're not just talking about food. They're talking about everything that you consume. And here I am on a Monday morning when I could be learning, when I could be meditating, when I could be walking in the fresh air, when I could be stepping away from all of the pressures of modern life and connecting with soul, connecting with spirit. And instead, I'm watching reels. I'm watching Louis C.K. and then a thirst trap appears on my screen. And then come over here and look at this and do that. And then the pinball machine starts up and your brain just starts racing. It's like your brain's not supposed to race like that. Not on a 24/7 cycle, man. Is it any wonder you can't sleep? Is it any wonder you're amped up all the time? It's like, what are you doing to your brain? What are you doing to your life? How much time are you wasting sucked down this awful, toxic rabbit hole? And so I'm trying to present this now in a more measured way, in a more gentle way, in a more pacifying way, because I think that's better than coming in all amped up. But I really seriously think these days about unplugging entirely from online life. Because everything I see, if it's even real, even if it isn't, it's all so much driven by political division and rage. And I do recognize that at this precarious time, it's very, very, very important for well-intentioned people to speak out and to have their voices heard. And it's important to be informed. I mean, there is a certain privilege that comes with checking out of the news cycle. That's dangerous. I've talked before about this fine line between being informed and then being caught up in it. I'm not quite sure. I work on my spirituality, but it takes hits every day when I find myself just consuming other people's rage or consuming stuff that makes me furious. And there is so much in the world that makes me furious and makes most decent people furious. And we're very much powerless to do much about that. It's important to be informed. And I'm like, where do you draw the line? But now you've got this added layer of, is what I'm seeing even real? Is it even real? Did that actually happen? Is somebody making that up? Is it a bot? Was that comment made by a faceless account with 17 followers? It's hard to sort it all out. And I find myself increasingly, especially as this AI thing becomes more and more and more prevalent, just wanting to check out, just wanting to get back into real reality. And I did that last Friday night. My pal Stace and I went down to Toronto. We went to the Phoenix, which I've never been to before. This legendary, terrific rock club holds about 1,000, 1,200 people to see the Darkness. And I love the Darkness. Their first record, Permission to Land, is one of the great first records of all time. And what a breath of fresh air it was. When it came out in the early 2000s, nu metal had kind of its thing. Coldplay was happening. This pop thing was happening. There hadn't been like balls out classic rock and roll, guitar rock. Hadn't been a thing since about 1992. All of a sudden, out of nowhere comes the Darkness. They are glam. They are flamboyant. They are so fun. And that first record, Permission to Land, if you have not listened to that thing front to back, do. It's a classic rock and roll record. It's great, man. It's AC/DC, it's Cheap Trick, it's Queen. And Justin Hawkins is an absolute badass total rock star. I had not seen the Darkness live. They're playing in Toronto. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And we did. And the place was packed out. It was sweaty. And they came on and they just kicked ass. They just kicked ass. Now, of course, their big song is I Believe in a Thing Called Love. And it's relevant to this sort of reduced rant that I'm doing, because they played that last in the main set, and it's what everybody's waiting for, and they know it. And Justin Hawkins says, all right, we're going to do the song, I Believe in a Thing Called Love. And incidentally, they did it in the original key, and he hit all of those notes. Dude is a complete rock star. I digress. But he's like, we're going to do this, but do us a favor, put your phones away. Do us a favor, put your phones away, and let's have a moment together. Don't record this. Experience it with us. And it wasn't the same as Ghost. When I saw Ghost in Berlin earlier this year, that was a no phones policy, which I 100% applaud and support. Would have liked to have some photos, but it's cool. You walked in there, you had to put your phone in a pouch, and they locked it. Keep your phone with you, but you can't get into it. Fabulous. Well, this wasn't that, all right? The whole show, everybody's phone was out. I did take a few photos. You saw them on social media. Then, after that, I made a whole bunch of angry political posts. You know, for the algorithm. So put your phones away. Let's experience this song we all love together. And so 99% of us put our phones away. And we experienced that song together. And it was great. And they just crushed, man. They are such a great band. Such a great live band. Consummate entertainers. Total pros. And I'm glad I got to see the darkness while there's still the darkness. You know, there's going to come a time, 15 or 20 years from now when they're maybe not doing that song in the original key. And maybe Justin's falsetto isn't quite there in the way that it still is. I'm glad I got to see them still as the darkness. And they were great. They were freaking fantastic. And it was like, yeah, put your phone away. Put your phone away and experience this. I never quite understood the people who record the whole show. Like, you're not going to watch that later. You're missing the whole thing. And then Saturday night, I had a gig with Fresh Breath, the biannual Barn on the Farm show down outside Kingsville. Sold out and a tremendous crowd, the best crowd we've had at one of those shows. And they danced and they were up front and we played, and it's like, yeah, get into real reality. I had 2 very healthy doses of real reality. And it's stupid then that I blew that on Monday morning by doom scrolling. And it's like the antidote is, A, if you've got the discipline, exercise it. I struggle with the discipline. I'm hooked. I'm hooked on the phone. I'm hooked on the stupid socials, but I'm waking up a little bit to how much wasted time that is, how much wasted bandwidth that is, how much wasted energy that is, that I could be pouring into so much more valuable and edifying things than that. And I'm making some changes. I'm determined to restructure my relationship with the digital world. And being at the darkness and playing that show with Fresh Breath and being in the moment, sharing moments of real reality with people. So much better. So much a better way to spend your time, spend your energy, so much more edifying. And I think the world would be a lot better off if we could all, they should shut it all down. There should be 4 hours a day where all these apps are live. Somebody, ironically, on Threads posted something, more engagement farming, which is what's a Canadian thing that you miss? Something to that effect. And I bit. I'm like, one of the things that I miss is the sign-off of the national anthem at the end of the broadcast day. Remember that, Generation X? The TV used to go off air at midnight. And they would play the national anthem. And there was video of shot all across Canada. And the shots were laced together with an animation, I think, of a goose maybe flying across the country. And it signaled the end of the broadcast day. You shut it off. Everybody unplugged from what at that time was the digital world, which was TV. It's like the apps should do that. Everything shuts off at a certain hour and you just can't access this anymore. Unplug, get away from this, get back into real reality. Have conversations with people, breathe a little bit. We don't do that. And because the apps are insidious, the apps are so good because they've hired the best frigging minds, casino people they've hired to teach us how to turn the phone into a dopamine slot machine. Dopamine slot machine. Has anybody used that yet as a song or album title? Ho ho! That will definitely be the episode title. So I'm having to renegotiate social media. And I got to think seriously about what's worth doing. What's worth even being connected to at this point. People don't see my stuff for the most part. And every other post is an ad. And reels are just an endless cacophony of nonsense. And you wonder, maybe I can train my algorithm better. Maybe I can exercise a little bit of frigging discipline about staying away from it. And it's food for thought. It's food for thought. But I didn't like my rant. I didn't like my rant about it because it just felt as though I was adding more of that energy to the fire. And I don't want to be performative. I think about this a lot. I do have an idiom on this podcast. I developed the idiom because I felt like it was more interesting than me in reality. I'm trying a little bit to blend the two so that it's not performative. It can be energetic and engaging without being kind of a lie. I'm not an actor here trying to be sincere. And I didn't like it. I didn't like wasting those precious moments at the beginning of Monday when I could have been doing something peaceful or edifying. And instead, I'm looking at photographs of people falling out of the Twin Towers. That's no way to start your day. That's no way to start your week. Mind you, falling out of the Twin Towers is also no way to start your day. Let's not get you thinking about that. So what am I saying? I'm saying disconnect. To the extent that you can, disconnect. Take a real objective look at how you're spending your time online, what you're actually consuming, and when you're done consuming it, how do you feel? Because if you feel bad, if you feel a little bit sickly, that is your soul, your higher self telling you that you don't want to do that and you feel powerless against it. And if you're feeling that the way I felt that demands some real inquiry. And I'm going to recommend you get out into the real world and have real experiences. You can start Saturday night if you're in London at the Palisade where the Carly Thomas Band will be playing starting at 9:30. You can start there. Come and say hello. And take a couple photos because we need them, but then put the phone away. It begins with an inquiry. Now, you don't have to have a kind of come to Jesus moment like I did Monday morning. Maybe you do. You don't have to. It begins with an inquiry. How much time am I spending on social media? What am I consuming there? Does it make me feel good? And do I even remember a single thing I just looked at? And if the answers to those are like, no, time for an evaluation. And then get out into the real world. Go have real experiences with real people and stop documenting them. You don't frigging need to. Make memories. You know? I think we'll all be a hell of a lot better off if we do it that way. So, this is turning into a short episode. I just didn't have time this week. The Job thing took a ton out of me. Then I was the Darkness Friday night, and I was a gig out of town Saturday night. I just didn't have time to put into researching anything. I wanted to have what Blind Boy would call a phone call episode. You know, when he has an episode that comes along where he just hasn't got really anything prepared, he treats it more like a phone call. It's not really a prepared podcast. It's more as if he was calling you on the phone just to chat. And so I'm chatting with you this week about some of my observations of myself as a phone and social media addict, which I do not want to be anymore. Maybe you don't either. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the episodes, those who have. I want to thank you for the compliments I've received. Thank you very much. I want to thank you for ratings and reviews, and I so value and appreciate those. So if you get 10 seconds, do me a solid, please. Drop by Apple. Give me a 5-star, please. Drop a little review. Warms my cockles. I so often feel like nobody's listening. Not to turn this into a pity party, but I so often feel like there's just nobody listening, man. Nobody paying attention. So when I see a little rating or review, I know somebody is and that they appreciate it. And I appreciate you for that. I'm going to go because this is turning into an advertorial. This is turning into something you would see on the shopping channel. I don't want to do that. I want to remind you that good things happen when you put yourself out there, but you got to put yourself out there. And if you do, keep your phone in your damn pocket. Talk to you next week, kids.